All right, good evening, folks. I think we'll try and get started here right on time on a beautiful sunny afternoon. Welcome everyone who's joining us in the gallery, those that are joining online, members of the public, council, city staff, and everybody else. Welcome to our beautiful historic City Hall here in downtown Summerside. And I would now call to order the Committee of the Whole meeting of May 5th, 2026. I'll call for a mover and a seconder to move and second the agenda as presented. So moved by Councillor McColeman, second. Deputy Snow, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposition, changes, revisions? Hearing none, we'll move on. We begin each one of our meetings here by acknowledging that the land upon which we're gathered is unceded Mi'kmaq territory. Ebikway is covered by the historic treaties of peace and friendship. We pay our respects to the Indigenous Mi'kmaq people who have occupied this island for over 12,000 years, past, present, and future. At this point, I'll ask any member of council to declare a conflict of interest with respect to any item on the agenda tonight. Seeing and hearing none, we'll tick along. We're through the first four. Quick little two minor housekeeping notes just for council. Councillor Adams is unable to join us this evening. She sends her regrets. I will loop in with her afterwards and spoke with her before. As well, I'm going to endeavor to do our best here as a council to stay within our mandated time limit for council meetings without having to pass an additional motion, which is 3 hours. So we will do our best, council. So I'm going to try and move it along where necessary, and so we can make sure we get through everything tonight and out while it is still light. That's how I will set that's our goal for tonight. We will move on to item 5, committee reports and recommendations. We have a few here tonight, and we'll go through them as we come up to them. We'll start with Finance Committee from Councillor MacDougall, Chair of Finance Committee. Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Your Worship. I don't have a report, but I do have a couple of items. The report would have involved these two items anyway, and we're scheduling a meeting in the next week or two. So, the first one on the agenda is the recommendation of debt management policy. A debt management policy has been developed for the general tax fund and a separate one for the utilities. The policies are attached on the outline the purpose, relevant definitions, roles, responsibilities, policy details, and additional considerations. The Finance Committee has reviewed the drafts and have made comments which have been incorporated into the version that is attached to the agenda here. And going to ask Director Krista McDonald to give us a little Reader's Digest version of it.
Good evening. Tonight, our debt management policies have been introduced, and it is being recommended by the Finance Committee to present a resolution to adopt them at the May monthly meeting. I've been asked to present a few slides this evening. These slides are not the details of the policy, but a discussion on some of the key performance metrics that have been measured regarding the city's capacity to pay down debt and as a benchmark against other Canadian municipalities and utilities. So first of all, these policies formalize how we can manage borrowing to ensure long-term financial sustainability while continuing to invest in infrastructure. The first thing is our debt is not currently a problem, as in that we are not uncontrolled or inconsistent. What I mean by that is we plan to borrow long-term for certain assets, and we are consistent in how we operate that. It is not about, and it is about continuing to be disciplined. So why are these policies needed? Debt service costs need to be controlled to limit impact on programs, services, and utility user rates. To make well-informed borrowing decisions within a clear financial framework and not on a case-by-case basis. Our infrastructure demands are not decreasing. whether for new or replacement of assets. So our current debt position, as of March 31st, 2026, we have debt outstanding of 91.8 million, and we will soon be going out to borrow for our capital expenditures for 25-26, which total 14.4 million. So that brings us to 106.2. Our legislated debt limit, so the ceiling, per the Municipal Government Act, we shall not borrow in excess of 10% of our current assessed value of real property. And you may recall that debt related to the electric utility is exempt from that debt limit. So our current taxable assessment is nearly 1.4 billion, which brings our debt limit to 140 million. We set an internal debt limit in our capital investment plan, which we do need to review. That was set quite a number of years ago. We had said we did not want to borrow more than 75% of our legislated limit. So that would be 104.8. So the debt that we would include when we calculate against our debt limit equals 80.4. So we would take our total debt of 106.2, deduct the electric utility. That's how we get the 80.4. So currently we're under our debt limit by 59.4 million. And what we have planned for this current fiscal year, as far as borrowing and repayments, is we have $17.3 million that we plan to borrow related to the fire hall and utility infrastructure upgrades. And we have 8.9 million in principal repayments. So we are looking to add 8.4 in new borrowing. That will impact our debt limit by 4.6 million because we deducted the electric utility. So we will be at 85 compared to our debt limit of 139.8. So we're still relatively healthy compared to our debt ceiling. So now we'll look at some key performance metrics for the general tax fund. So the first one is the debt per capita. So that is the amount of debt per resident in the municipality. So we looked at some thresholds. So that is, how do we compare it to benchmark against some other municipalities? So we're looking to target the moderate threshold, which is 1,000 to 2,500. Where we fall currently is we're at $1,989 expected as of March 31st, 2027, so within our current fiscal year. But one thing I'll caution is that is based on the population at the last census, which was done in 2021. So if you take 18,000 as a population, so the 20 and 21 census was 16,001. So even if we looked at 18,000 as a new population figure, that would be down to 1,768. So well within the moderate threshold. The next metric is debt service as a percentage of operating revenue. So that is the amount of our current year annual operating budget that is required to service our debt, being both principal and interest. So the moderate threshold is 10 to 15%, so that's what we're targeting. As of March 31st, 2027, we expect to be at 15.9%, so we're just a bit over that moderate target. So, but I will caution that we expect in 2027-28 to be around the 15%. But then after Credit Union Place is paid off in December 2027, and even once we are paying for the new fire hall, we will be down around 9.3% of our operating budget. Total debt is a percentage of the operating budget, so that is the percentage of our annual operating revenues that are required to fully extinguish our general fund total debt. So we're looking at a moderate threshold of 50 to 70% as our target. As of March 31st, 2027, we will be at 87.7%. But now, due to our stable tax base, that remains manageable. Many provinces would consider 100 to 120% at a point where debt becomes an overextension and where debt service costs would impact operations. So this is just a summary of those three metrics. And we need to look at these metrics. We should not look at these individually. We need to look at these together as they provide a picture of financial affordability, capacity, and risk. So again, debt per capita, the target, we're within that range. Debt service as a percentage of operating revenue, we will be within that range fairly soon. And total debt as a percentage of operating budget, we're outside that range, but we're not at the area where we're overextended. So what do these numbers mean? So I'm just going to read the notes here. So overall, this indicates a manageable debt position with a capacity for additional borrowing, but not an unlimited capacity, even though we are 59.4 million under our legislated debt ceiling. Debt service costs are currently 15.9% of revenues, which would indicate less room for new borrowing without impacting programs and services. But this is expected to be down to 9.3 in 2028-29. So the construction of the new fire hall was strategically timed to coincide with the full repayment of Credit Union Place debt. In December 2027, Credit Union Place debt, which was $30 million, will be paid in full. The annual debt service costs related to that debt were $2.3 million. Next, go on to the electric utilities. So I have some similar metrics to do for the utilities. So this one is debt per customer. So you're looking at the amount of debt per customer. The threshold being moderate is $1,000 to $2,500 as the target. So we are a little bit above that target for the electric utility. We are at 2627. So we could look at further consideration for these targets because these relate to electric utilities that have distribution assets and not generation assets. We have both. So we'll do a little bit more research on those thresholds. The debt service ratio is the amount of current year annual operating budget that is required to service the debt. Moderate threshold is 10 to 20%. We are currently at 9.4% as of March 31st, 2027. So this percentage is within the acceptable range, even though there are significant capital infrastructure needs, both in distribution and generation assets. Rate adjustments are necessary to cover increased operational costs. Our debt service ratio will increase without rate adjustments. Total debt as a percentage of net capital assets. This measures how much of the electric utilities infrastructure is financed through debt. So you're looking at a moderate threshold of 40 to 60%. So we're just slightly over that moderate threshold. So we're at 65.6. And it is quite common for electric utilities to be predominantly financed through borrowing. At March 31st, 2027, we expect that 66 cents of every dollar of infrastructure value is financed by debt. This is not extreme, but it does reduce flexibility to take on new debt that do not have revenue sources. The water and sewer utilities, so the amount of debt per customer, we're just a little bit under the moderate threshold at $2,400 $127. And there would be concerns about affordability when we see customer growth slowing or stopping, or rate adjustments delayed. Debt service ratio, the amount of current year annual operating budget required to service the debt. Again, 10 to 20% is the target. This one, we are in the high range, so we're currently at 40.9%. So that means that 41 cents of every dollar are needed to pay debt service costs, with the remaining 59 cents needed for operating cost. So this ratio is a very high level. Annual rate adjustments are necessary. Without necessary capital would need to be deferred. Total debt as a percentage of net capital assets, so the moderate range, 40 to 60%. We're currently just slightly, we're in that range, so we're in that moderate range at 49.5. So we're gonna have to obviously monitor that relative to future capital and asset conditions, especially with the fact that we do not have reserves built up. So the key messages here is we're seeing moderate pressure with two of the metrics being slightly above the target range for the electric utility. It's a different picture for the water and sewer utilities, with the debt service ratio being at a high level, with 41 cents of every dollar being needed to cover debt service costs. Utilities are capital intensive, with assets that are long lived and have cycles of infrastructure growth and or replacement phases. The electric and water and sewer utilities are investing in both growth and renewal. These costs will need to be recovered through rates over time. The revenues are stable, but rate adjustments are necessary, which we had talked about during budget discussions. So, roles and responsibilities when it comes to debt management. So council will approve the debt management policies and new debt borrowing, and they'll approve debt service costs in the budget. Finance committee will review debt borrowing requirements, recommend to council to approve new debt borrowing, and will review the debt management policies and make recommendations for changes as appropriate. And then the Department of Financial Services will borrow the funds as authorized and when required, ensure debt service costs are made as outlined in the loan agreements, calculate the key performance metrics annually, and forecast long-term debt during budget preparation, capital planning, and recommend revisions to the policy. So the next steps would be the May 2026 council meeting, that a council resolution be presented to adopt the policies. In fall 2026 and annually thereafter, key performance metrics, so there will be additional ones to the ones that were presented tonight, will be measured and reported to Finance Committee, then will be presented to council. February 2027 and annually thereafter, long-term debt will be forecasted based on the capital investment plan presented during budget deliberations. Key performance metrics will be remeasured based on the latest inputs, so operating results, customer counts. And May 2031, Finance Committee will review policy and suggest revisions to council.
That's great, Kristen. Excellent job, and it's an excellent report. First of all, I want to thank you and your staff and management for all the work that's gone into this. We've had it on the burner for a while, and there's a lot of great information in there, and very easy to understand. There was one thing on the 41% that was the. Is that due to taking on the additional growth that the city had? With that, a combination of the additional growth and a combination of not putting the proper rates in at the, when they needed to be?
It would be
Or
a
taken?
combination of those
So it's a
items.
combination of both, right? Okay. Is there anyone got any questions for Kristen? If not, I would urge anybody that does to go in and sit down with Kristen and have a good go of it. Great job, thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Kristen. Thanks, Chair MacDougall. So the next step then, Council has the general tax fund debt management policy and the utility debt management policy.
Right.
So those will move to our next council meeting at the end of this month.
Yes.
Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Bruce, and other committee members for the work that you put in over the last number of months. As members of the public probably know, we have to operate a balanced budget here in terms of operating each year, and while we have the provincially legislative guidelines that are set for how much capital debt we can carry, I think it's really valuable that your committee has gone above and beyond that and provided a more complete picture than just a single metric, which really helps identify some of the places we're doing well, some of the areas that we're not stewards of other people's money, taxpayer dollars. It's incumbent on us to make sure that they are well managed and well spent in priority areas. So thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
With that, I'm just wondering, we have I don't think the folks in the gallery came for the debt management policy presentation. No?
We can skip over to.
I thought maybe we could skip over unless you want to go through the bylaw changes for code of conduct and a number of others. I thought maybe we jump to the seed report, if that's okay with council, and ask Committee Chair Trenholm to present his report from the Seniors Equity and Engagement Directive. Is that okay, Councillor? Yeah. Okay. Councillor Trenholm.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that. So, yeah, I just want to begin by, I think, lots of familiar faces over there, I guess. I definitely want to acknowledge also Age Friendly are in the building, so we can, Age Friendly are here, which is wonderful. I just have a short prelude, I guess, and then I'm looking for council's direction on what to do with the report, just so we know. So think about that as I'm talking here. But I do want to thank council for the mandate that was given to this committee. Throughout this process, seniors consistently expressed that they felt heard, and that really, really matters. The SEED Committee began work in September of 2025 and submitted our final report in April. Today, Council has before it the full report entitled A Clear Path Forward, Seniors' Priorities and Solutions. As a committee, we took our responsibility seriously, as all committees do. A key in this process has been to honor the voices of seniors, those who have helped shape both this report and our community. To do that, we held 35 public input meetings to gather in feedback face-to-face. That's what I said, 35. We also conducted both online and paper surveys, resulting in 184 responses. As a committee, we met 11 times. During those meetings, we worked through more than the 300 proposed recommendations that came from over 500 seniors. From that, we refined a manageable number of targeted recommendations designed to have the greatest impact. This was definitely not an easy task, but it was one that the committee approached with great care and dedication. It's also important to note that many of these recommendations just don't benefit seniors, but they benefit the entire community, people of all ages. We also tested our draft recommendations through a follow-up survey. The results were overwhelmingly positive. 94% supportive, 6 just unsure, and there was 0 opposition. Even when we asked seniors who didn't see their specific idea in the report, 100% were still supportive. So up to this point, seniors have told us that the process has been effective, inclusive, and transparent. Now the report is in council's hands. The best way to continue honoring that work is through transparency in what comes next. So transparency matters just not from a community perspective, but also, as we know, part of our responsibilities under the Code of Conduct. So there's just 3 short quotes here. In the Code of Conduct, decision-making processes must be transparent and subject to public scrutiny. Our behavior as council must build and inspire public's trust and confidence in municipal government. And the third one, members of council have a duty to be as open as possible about their decisions and actions. This means communicating appropriate information openly to the public about decision-making processes and issues being considered. So the question now is, council, how can we ensure transparency moving forward? I would suggest that it begins with council how to choose to receive the report. We could just receive the report as a seniors needs assessment and leave it as that. I would propose that council do bring a resolution to the next meeting that includes a recommendation, each recommendation, I guess, and not a blanket statement. So this approach would serve three important purposes. First, it ensures council clearly sees and considers each recommendation. Second, it allows the public, and especially seniors, some in this room, many not in this room, to fully understand what is being considered and giving their voices visibility. And third, it provides a lot of flexibility for council. Council can amend the resolution by removing items they don't wish to support, by even adding to individual recommendations without rejecting, say, all the report or all the recommendations. So I also suggest that each recommendation in the resolution be brief, much shorter than my speaking right now, maybe a 1 or 2 sentence summary with a further explanation contained within the report itself. This just ensures clarity, provides a clear commitment to action, and prevents the report from sitting idle. It certainly was a fear expressed by many. So the final outcome, what was approved, what was not approved by council, will then be included immediately after the cover page of the report. Just the report, I admit, is a little long, so having at the cover page knowing these items are being supported and approved, and these ones aren't. Seems transparency. I think that's what, as a council, we need, and I think as a seniors who've provided the input deserve. And then once council determines what recommendations we want to work forward on, we could work with the CIO to determine how they could be implemented. So I'm just curious how council would feel, I guess, just in summary, just looking at the next step would be a resolution that would outline each of the recommendations made in the report briefly, given council the opportunity to approve or deny a particular recommendation, as it would any resolution that comes. You just make a motion, can we remove that, and you have a vote, and if majority say, majority rule, just without throwing out the entire report and recommendation. So certainly open to other ideas and suggestions council might have on how to move forward, but that makes sense to me. And I should also say the committee itself, that's what the committee wished to do, would to have a resolution to identify, to easily clarify what's moving forward and what's not. So I'll just open the floor for everybody.
Comments, questions from members of council? Councillor McColeman?
Well, I want to thank you, Councillor Ken, and the committee members for the great job, the great work, and the detail that you've put into it. I mean, there's no shortage of information that makes us realize. And I think the point that you're making about a resolution or whatever, I believe that it gives it a solid ground to stand on if there is a resolution. And I think when people put their time and effort in, and the residents have come out, I think it's very, very important that they feel that they've been listened to, but it's been formalized through a resolution. So thank you for that. Okay.
Councillor MacDougall?
Yeah, and Ken, Councillor Trenholm, I should say, and the committee, great work here, and there's definitely a lot of reading and definitely a lot of recommendations. I think the first thing we need to do is accept the report and clarify all the recommendations and how has any of them got a dollar value and I think we need to review that. So whether we accept the recommendations and then come back with the resolutions later, I'm not against it, but I just, I guess being on finance, I just don't want to accept a whole bunch of recommendations and not knowing the dollar value that we're approving, right, basically. So I'd like to have a clearer definition on that part. But overall, a great report. And yes, this is something that doesn't need to sit on a shelf because I'm a senior. Look at my Arctic blonde hair.
I'm sorry. I'm just, yeah, so I guess Councillor MacDougall, I'm thinking, yeah, so perhaps then identify, because going through them, and I know we presented to council and identified these ones have a budget attached to it and these ones don't. So maybe phrasing the resolution in such a way that could identify that anything that does have a dollar figure ultimately would only truly be approved until budget time or when the money becomes available, right? So it's almost in approving those budgetary things in principle, with, if that makes sense. Yeah. Right. And I was also, as my mic's on, curious too in terms of, would there be any interest in perhaps of an implementation committee for items that may not be crystal clear, like some items, for example, seem to, a few go to a bylaws committee, right? So, but if there was interest in an implementation committee for other items that just maybe aren't as crystal clear, I'm open for feedback there too.
Any further comments from members of council? Deputy Snow?
Yeah, just quickly, thank you to the committee and Ken and everyone for the work and thoroughness of the report. I do like the thought of having some sort of resolution come forward and then maybe with some caveat in there regarding finances. The last thing I like to see, the thing I hate to see most is when work like this happens and then it sits somewheres and those items that we've asked everybody to share with us, please, how can we help, or what do you need to see happen in your community, and then we do nothing. So I would really like to see the things that can easily happen quickly get done as quick as we can, and then the stuff that needs more information or finances attached to it, figure out how we can also do those, because obviously the people, the individuals, the seniors in the community played an important role in building our community, and we should be doing what we can to make sure living in Summerside is as good as we can for them. So, yeah, quickly, just a quick way to accept the report and then find a way to word a resolution. I think that's a great idea.
Great. Any further comments, questions from members of council? So I think I'm starting to get an idea of what the rough plan is here. Would be to move forward with the with the resolution to council that accepts the presentation of the report, goes through the series of recommendations. I guess council will have to discuss whether they see them as set in stone or guideposts for decision making. But some overlay of budgetary costs and constraints, recognizing, of course, right, one of the things I think is always really important is that there is no such thing as a free lunch. So no matter what you have to do, there is a cost and associated with it. I see your hand up, so give me a second. So I think it's really important to work through that and following the conversation we just had to make sure that dollars are spent responsibly and balanced against other needs within the community. So we'll look forward to that resolution and ideally some discussion amongst council, perhaps as an implementation piece. There's nothing in here I don't love. I have given all my comments as well on the draft I think you shared with your committee from each one. Great job, wonderful report. But as I think you indicated, the goal is not to make a nice report. The goal is to create change and actionable items that can benefit members of our community in the years ahead, and that's where the rubber hits the road, and that's where the going gets tough. So as much as there's been a lot of work so far, I suggest that the heavy lifting from the input and the members of the public is there. We've got an amazing series of guideposts and direction. Now we've got to do some heavy lifting to get done what we can get done and make sure council can prioritize the actions. So great job. I think we will maybe work with you, Ken, to draft something, and then that can come through the next council meeting. I think there are 45 recommendations in total, including the advocacy pieces, so perhaps a sentence is good. We'll work on the timing and figure out a way to move forward with council's consideration of implementation with respect to understanding the cost of operating capital and also staff time in terms of execution. There was a hand up from the gallery here, so do you want to address council and provide comment? Is that what the hand up is for? If you do, I have a little process we have to follow. It's pretty straightforward. I'd ask you to go to the microphone, and we'll turn on the mic for you, and state your name. And I would also have to ask council. I can guess their answer on this, but as long as council is okay with having a member of the public address council. Yeah. We're supposed to pass a motion. So, Councillor MacDougall, you want to so move? Second, Councillor Snow, all in favor? Yes, of course. We'll move on. There you go. We've checked our boxes.
On CBC this morning, it said that more seniors are going to be moving into Summerside. They feel that it will be quite an increase of seniors, whereas some of the younger people will move out because they can't afford a lot of the things that because of the costs that have risen in housing and everything else. So my big concern with all of us baby boomers and more seniors coming in, yes, there's housing going up for everyone, and it's hard to get into seniors housing because there's wait lists all over the place. And I feel that that council really needs to look at what's happening now that some of the reports are in and there's an increase, and that we need to have more seniors housing that has things available for seniors within, so we can age and have what we need within the city without having to move out. So a lot of single seniors they weren't at the meeting as much as some of the more family-oriented people. And so I think that we are underrepresented in there, and then there's a lot of us single seniors roaming around, needing to have something that will work for us, because mainly the city of Summerside has a great population of people who have been here and keep coming back here, families and their friends and everything, and it is expanding just really at a great proportion. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your comments and feedback. Again, a lot of nodding heads here, that's for sure. Continuing to find ways and opportunities to make sure we meet the needs of our older adults is a key priority, clearly, for this council, and recommendations from the committee will hopefully move us towards, someone's mic is on, move us towards that. Any further comments, questions? Councillor Trenholm, could move to the next meeting?
Just very briefly, I really do want to serve. It's really been an honor to serve. I guess I had an idea what I was getting myself in for, but it was truly an honor to hear and to listen directly from seniors about what their needs are and solutions, and very articulate group of people. Not to paint everybody with the same brush, but yeah, without the seniors and without I should mention the committee as well has been phenomenal. And their committees, yeah, sometimes they lasted more than 3 hours. Anyway, thank you to everybody, and thank you, council.
Great, thank you, Councillor, and looking forward to that further discussion amongst council. With that, if people do want to stay, you can. If you don't, that's okay. We won't be, our feelings won't be hurt. We have thick skin in this job we signed up for. So feel free to head out if you want, or feel free to hang around and listen to conversations about Code of Conduct Bylaw changes. All right, we'll wait a minute just to let folks come out. Great, thank you, Council. We'll now move back to item 5A, sub 2, Finance Chair MacDougall.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I do have a funding request from the Prince County Hospital Foundation. And the Prince County Hospital Foundation has provided an update on its Innovation and Learning Center project and has formally requested funding support from the City of Summerside. This request was presented to the Finance Committee for discussion. The Prince County Hospital Foundation has provided Council with previous updates on this project. The Innovation and Learning Center will be a 4-story hub with 2 floors specifically organized to support the UPEI facility of medicine. This project has transitioned from conceptual phase into an active development. Contributions to capital projects have been made in the past fiscal years to a nonprofit organization. The current commitment to the Prince County Hospital Foundation is a 10-year pledge, and we're in their 5th year of this, and funding supports their equipment fund. So the Finance Committee is recommending that Council approve $200,000 capital contribution to the Innovation and Learning Center building to be paid over 3-year installments, and with the first payment of about $100,000 in 26-27, and the second payment of $50,000 in 27-28, and the third payment of $50,000 in 28-29. And that's a recommendation from the Finance Committee, and we'd like to move that on to our council meeting. Just any questions on that?
Would you mind, Councillor MacDougall, I just missed the second amount for 27-28?
Yes, it's $200,000 basically over 3 years.
Okay.
And the first year, which is this year, 26-27, we're giving them $100,000. Next year, the 27-28 will be $50,000, and the 28-29 will be $50,000.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no further comments or questions from council. Oh, Deputy Snow.
And we're currently into a 10-year contribution of 20 or 25 a year? Is that 20? And a 10-year?
Yes.
And that expires when?
So we're year 5
We're in
right
year
now.
5, so 5 years from now.
Yep.
And this will be paid out in 3 years, okay. And then we revert, okay.
Yeah, so it's not annualized funding, it's capital contribution for a project next to the hospital. Okay. Great, one-time project. Thank you, Councillor. So that'll move to our May monthly meeting with a resolution. Great, thank you, Councillor MacDougall and Finance Committee. Now move to Chair of Bylaw Governance Committee, Councillor McColeman. Chair McColeman.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just have a very brief report from the committee. The Bylaw and Governance Committee reviewed the Code of Conduct Bylaw change log and required changes in the Municipal Government Act Code of Conduct regulations. We recommend staff present information on this bylaw to the rest of council for everyone's information. The committee also received updates on the status of the redrafting of the vacant on-site bylaw, which will include information about legal limitations on incorporating financial penalties for vacant commercial properties in a bylaw, and discussed potential alternates to this approach. Director MacDonald will be consulted on this matter. Lastly, the committee heard a summary on the research findings relating to mobile sales establishment bylaws from other jurisdictions and other further discussions or potential directions from council. But in closing on the first part, bylaw and governance, the detailed review which we're going to hear, brief synopsis, took a great deal of research and community and staff discussions within other municipalities, and it required changes due to the Municipal Government Act, the Code of Conduct regulations. So as a committee, we received the information, discussed it a great deal, and we are recommending it to the rest of council for consideration. Thank you.
Name's Lindsay. I think everyone knows me by now. So just as a little reminder for this process, as we have a number of bylaws to review and go through, the process that we're trying to follow is having a discussion at the committee level about something in more detail, a bylaw in more detail, and then bringing that information session, anything highlighted by the committee, to council for sharing information, to give everyone a chance to sit with the information or sit with any new changes, and also to allow time for questions and other discussion, which we will then take back to the committee level to discuss together. That all happens before the committee would recommend for a bylaws first reading at a council meeting. And then following a successful first reading, the bylaw would be moved to a second reading at a subsequent council meeting. So that's the process that we're working within. And today we've got a fun topic. I know we lost our audience, but I'll keep it upbeat. So Code of Conduct. We'll start off with a little bit of context. So the Code of Conduct is one of 8 bylaws required of all municipalities as outlined by the MGA. It is accompanied by its own set of regulations, and it's fairly prescriptive, so meaning that it's very detailed. There's actually an excerpt from Stuart McKelvey, a notice written by Perline Morrison, KC. Just that last line, it says, the regulations have mandated the actual bylaw content in some instances, so it is critical for your Code of Conduct bylaw to include the precise wording that is set out in the regulations. That made my job a lot easier. It's a lot easier to copy and paste it. So these changes were published in spring of 2023 with expectation for compliance in early 2024. And as we're going through this, as part of the meeting package, I did include the red line version, which can be a little bit difficult to follow. So I've condensed everything into a Code of Conduct kind of changelog graph that we'll be going through each item specifically. We'll have time for questions at the end, but if something is really big, feel free to just say something and we'll discuss it. So up first is previously we only included the MGA and Criminal Code of Canada. Now we include the Code of Conduct regulations and Occupational Health and Safety Act regulations. The reasoning is compliance with Municipal Affairs template and the Code of Conduct regulations. The next section that had a change was section 7. We originally said that there will be a periodic review of the Code of Conduct, and the MGA is requiring a once in 5 years review. And the next section is number 8. This is an addition, so this previously wasn't something that was included within our bylaw. And it's a section outlining training expectations and consequences. So I've included a plain language summary of what that section includes. The CAO shall arrange training for members within 6 months of appointment, election, or re-election. The CAO shall ensure all members receive initial training on the Code of Conduct and bylaw or regulation changes. All training must follow minister specifications. The CAO must report to council if a member fails or refuses training completion. And members who refuse or fail to train shall not perform council duties or receive remuneration. Members who are incomplete in the Code of Conduct training are considered absent during meetings, regardless of physical presence. So this puts out that this training is important. It's a good thing to review. It's something that will happen after every election. It's organized by Municipal Affairs and arranged through the CAO. The next section, there's just some minor changes on this sheet. So section 9 used to be guiding principles. We've added in guiding principles and expectations. And we've also included some minor wording changes and reorganization of similar content that was just kind of reformatted. The next section is 10.2. This lists categories of confidential information. This was essentially the same information that we were updating to. It's just reformatted and cleaned up a little bit to the more recent language. The next section is on public disclosure statements. So there are some different requirements now associated with the public disclosure statements. There's a specific timeline for filing, so within 30 days of being elected or annually by November 30th each year. And then there's also a new direction to post the disclosure statements on the municipal website, where they will remain until an updated statement is filed or the individual is no longer a member of council. This wording is a direct copy and paste from the MGA and Code of Conduct regulations. The next section, 13, we previously had some similar information around the use of municipal property, equipment, and services. This new change has very explicit information on what is considered municipal property, equipment, and services. It's clearer language, but the content doesn't differ too much. And on to another addition. Much of this information existed in the previous Code of Conduct, but now it's organized and follows the order as outlined in the Code of Conduct regulations. So sections 14 to 16 sees the addition of improper use of influence, respectful workplace, and interactions of council with staff and service providers. First, for improper use of influence, councillors can't use their influence for any purpose other than official duties. If there is a municipal matter before a tribunal, councillors can't contact any tribunal members. On to respectful workplace, councillors must treat each other, employees, and public with respect. No bullying, intimidation, discrimination, or harassment. Councillors shall encourage public respect for the municipality and its bylaws. Councillors must respect council decisions once a decision has been made. Councillors must avoid unfairly harsh or mean-spirited comments towards other councillors, staff, or the municipality's official position on any topic. And the next section is the interactions of council with staff and service providers. Councillors shall not influence staff to hire or promote a councillor's friend, relative, associate, etc. Councillors shall respect that staff advise based on political neutrality and objectivity without undue influence from councillors or council. Councillors shall not direct or influence city employees except for the CAO. Councillors or council committee members may speak directly to staff to ask for or share information. And finally, councillors must not make public statements attacking or reflecting negatively on any city staff or use staff matters, reports, information, etc. for political purposes. And the next section, what was our previous 14, outlined reimbursable expenses for council members. This information is actually already laid out in the council remuneration bylaw, so it was unnecessary to include here and easier to remove rather than to have conflicting information. And part 4, complaints. A lot of this information, again, existed in some way in the previous draft or in the previous bylaw. This has been reformatted and includes some additions as outlined from the Code of Conduct regulations. The plain language summary of this is it includes provisions for multiple different situations. So whether one councillor is implicated, whether all councillors are implicated, and so on and so forth. It includes informal and formal resolution processes, so it's nice you can follow it along exactly like a guide. It separates out investigations from breaches and complaints. It includes provisions on sanctions, including the rights of a complainant and respondent, consequences, and process. And then as part of this, we've also included a new schedule for complaints. Previously, the schedule was related to, I think, a municipal affairs document. This is essentially the same, but it links to the document so that we can get the most up-to-date version. So our next steps after tonight, I will take note of any questions or discussions to bring back to the next Bylaw and Governance Committee meeting. We will prepare the draft as a repeal and replace bylaw for a first reading on May 19th, depending on how the discussion goes this evening. If it is read and approved as read on May 19th, it will go for a second reading. And does anyone have any questions or discussion?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, just one very brief one. Page 19, so it's section 9.3. I know we have striked out as a whole. I always like that, how it's read, how it reads. I gotta put my reading glasses on now, sorry. Members of council have a duty to make decisions based on the best interest of the municipality as a whole. I know you don't grammatically need as a whole there, but I don't know. For me, it kind of puts that little oomph that we are elected as to serve your ward, but we're elected by your ward, sorry, but we're serving the whole. I just like seeing as a whole there. I know it doesn't need to be from a grammatical point of view, but I just like to say as a whole, like, so it's the best interest of the municipality as a whole. So I don't know, I just like that punch. I don't know. It drives home the point, right? That's my point of view anyway. I really like it, but I'm okay with what council decide. But
So the reason,
Deputies know?
the reason it was taken out was just for that grammatical reasons?
I think the grammatical reason, I think probably just grammatical. It's hard with bylaws because you don't want to include anything that might unintentionally include something else. So that's actually, like, that would be a question that I can't answer. I would want to discuss with Kendra or a lawyer just to discuss that wording.
That's fair. And we could leave it in, I'm good with it too, but if it has to come out, yeah.
3
I
words, so.
understand. Right.
Great, thank you, Lindsay. I am a lawyer. Generally, you want to have language that is clear and consistent and understandable. You don't need to have extra punches around your words.
Fillers. That's our
So
policy.
as a whole, it's sort of older school drafting. So again, the goal, no matter how you write it down, is that people can understand what it is, or the people that are reading it or using it.
Sometimes old is good, Val.
Means the same thing one way or the other, so. Great, thank you. Next steps then, Councillor McColeman.
The next steps, I believe, will be going back to committee, and then
If
coming back for
there
reading.
isn't any significant questions or significant discussion points, then we can make a recommendation to bring it as a resolution for first reading.
Okay. And would it be possible, just for Councillor
Yeah.
Trenholm's comment, would we be able to get some kind of a
I'll double check that and
thought
send
on
something.
that, just
Absolutely.
to kind of address it?
Totally.
Okay, good. Thank you. Great job.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Chair McColeman and members of council. Look forward to seeing that come to our next council meeting. Move on to item 5C, Planning Committee. Councillor Doiron, we'll hand it over to you, Chair of Planning Board and Planning Committee.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, so Megan and Aaron are here to make what we presume will be one final sort of presentation to council before we are asked to make a decision on May 19th with regards to complete streets. May 19th being our monthly council meeting. There is a recommendation that came from the committee, but I would think that it might be best to maybe go through the presentation first and then go through the recommendation following that, or if there's any discussion to be had after the presentation to sort of read the recommendation at the very end. Unless there is any objections to that, I will kindly hand the floor over to Megan.
Oh, no.
When ready. I tried to ramble a little bit longer, but
Thank you.
I ran out of content.
So I don't specifically have a cute PowerPoint presentation to show you folks. I know, disappointing, right? This today before you is a summary of all of the discussions that we've had to date on Complete Streets. So basically just summarizing the different options. You can see those in Schedule A, all of the different cross sections. And then Schedule B gives a bit of a breakdown of the cost options, the cost sharing options. So today, what I'm really hoping for is for us to have a discussion if council has any additional questions, so that when we come back on the 19th, we have a resolution prepared and ready for council to consider. So I will do my best to quickly summarize what we've done to date. So we have, staff have put together 4 options for the local road cross sections. Option 1 is just a repurposing of the, here we go, of the existing right-of-way, just moving the travel lanes off to the side, just so that there is a shared pedestrian and bike lane off to one side. So this would essentially eliminate on-street parking. The option 2 and option 3 are essentially the same one. Option 3 is just delayed sidewalk construction. So this one is a little bit wider with the construction of a concrete sidewalk. With bikes and cars sharing the road. And then the last one is the Cadillac version, where it has a the option to have either on-street parking or a bike lane, and then the concrete sidewalk. So the planning committee did recommend option 4 with the tweak that the sidewalk construction would be delayed in a new subdivision. The next piece is the cost sharing. So we basically presented 2 cost sharing options to council. The Schedule B is just an example of how it breaks down, so I'm just going to focus on this piece here, which was a 50-50 split between the city and the home builders, or a 30% split between the developer, city, and the home builders. And we've given examples of what those estimated costs per meter would be in the 2 options based on the 2025 construction costs for a sidewalk. So what was the recommendation for committee on that one? Okay. We don't have a recommendation from the planning committee for that one. There was kind of too much we were thinking about to try to really nail down a recommendation for council as a whole. Yeah, so I will open the floor to discussion.
I'll just keep bashing it. It usually doesn't work. Actually, it does work. That's why people bash things. My daughter's fan was making a noise the other day. I just gave it a good swift smack. Not my daughter, the fan. And, and the fan stopped making the weird noise. And she learned a valuable lesson. I was going to hand it over to Councillor Doiron first, but
Go ahead.
long segue. I just had Councillor Doiron just to open. you're looking for feedback from council specifically on what tonight?
Yeah, if any, just council sort of, individuals, maybe preferences on what the recommendations are, or I could probably read this in because it goes through some numbers, which might aid council in either starting the discussion or landing on a decision. It's just a page worth, and then there's some graphics attached. Nothing we haven't seen before, but it's sort of nails down more of a specific set of options for us. So as Megan stated already, the background. So prior to coming before council in January of this year, staff and the planning committee had been working on how to best implement the official plan's complete streets policies since early 2025. On January 6th of this year, staff and the planning committee presented 4 local street cross-sections to the committee of the whole. Each cross-section included different ways to include a pedestrian walkway, enacting the complete streets policies in the official plan. The cross-sections have been included in Schedule A for reference, and that is just the following page. As a reminder, the Planning Committee's preferred cross-section was option number 4, which had off-centered travel lanes, reduced travel lane widths, space for bikes and cars to share the roads, a separate concrete sidewalk, and space for on-street parking or a dedicated active transportation lane. Additionally, the committee preferred that sidewalk construction be delayed to avoid damaging it as houses are constructed. The cost-sharing options brought before council on March 3rd were based on that option number 4. So on March 3rd, 2026, staff and the planning committee presented 2 cost-sharing options to council. Option 1 was the 50-50 split between the city and home builders. And with that option, there were 3 points. 1, the developers contribute the per meter cost of curb and gutter, and that cost is $90 per meter, and they construct the shale and gravel subbase layer for the future sidewalk. And the second point, the city pays half the remaining costs, equaling $149 a meter plus inflation costs. And third point, for the 50-50 split, the home builder pays a flat per lot rate based on $149 per meter. Option 2 was a 33-33-33 split between the developer, city, and home builders. And for that one, the developers contribute the per meter cost of curb and gutter, $90 per meter. They construct the shale and gravel subbase layer for the future sidewalk and pay 1/3 of the increased costs, $99 per meter. The city pays 1/3 of the increased costs, $99 per meter plus inflation, and the home builder pays a flat per lot rate based on $99 per meter. The city would hold the funds until it came time to construct the sidewalk. The money would be collected from the home builder at time of building permit issuance, which is when we currently collect building permit fees. The planning committee discussed different timelines for when to collect money from the developer, i.e. as part of final subdivision approval or after lots are sold. Schedule B breaks down the 2 options, the current practice and a no cost sharing option through phase 2 of the Starlight subdivision. So the next steps, we will be back to council on May 19th to seek direction on 3 key items. Item 1, which cross-section should be adopted as the new local road standard? Item 2, which cost-sharing option for the sidewalks should be adopted? And step 3, or item 3, when the changes should come into effect. Though staff have provided council with a set number of options, these are by no means the only options. Council has the discretion to provide alternative direction. Staff will use this direction to prepare the resolutions for council's consideration on May 19th. And there is a breakdown, like I said, page 1 is, or the next page is Schedule A, which shows the cross-sections, and then the next page is Schedule B, which shows the breakdown of the 2 options.
Thank you, Councillor. Further questions, comments from members of council? Councillor MacDougall?
The only, it's a great report and I fully support it. The additional cost that the city is paying on this. And how is this going to affect, because there's all kinds of streets that need sidewalks, and we struggle with our sidewalk budget every year. You know, we plan on doing 2 or 3 sidewalks, we end up doing half of one or something like that. So how is this going to affect that? I guess I'm concerned with the dollars. And my other question is, how well or what option does the developers favor that's not going to put us offside with other communities so that we're higher development costs than other communities? I guess that's my only concern, and it's probably been answered 100 times, but I'd like to hear it again.
Sorry. Your first question on, I can't answer for you on where the money's coming from on your guys' end as far as that relates to existing sidewalk budget. We can present you as typically the lists and you guys determine where those costs came from. This was an issue that council wanted us to consider as far as considering complete streets and what the cost would be. As part of that process, we did speak with a number of developers that came in, and that's where we came about with costing options. They didn't, I think perhaps even some of yourselves asked what would that cost be, and so that's why we used it, picked a subdivision to say what does, it's hard to say what are we implementing and what's the actual cost going to be, which is why the first option said we picked a typical subdivision, Starlight Phase 2 for example, and it was going to be $300,000 for that entire subdivision to be sidewalks on one side. So you'd have an order of magnitude of what the ask was and how many of those subdivisions would come in a year. And then you looked at that, we looked at that 300,000 and said, okay, is that fair for the city to be carrying all that cost? That's what, and then also it went, was it also fair for the initial thought was let that just be a developer's cost, which is why we broke it out to say it's almost $8,000 per lot in that typical subdivision. When we met with the developers, they said that they could not recover that $8,000 per lot in return revenue from it. They were open to some sort of a cost share, or some also felt that the city should be covering if the city wants to put sidewalks in. So that's why we presented this with total city cost and a couple of options of splitting the cost. And I think when we went back with our committee, we also looked at an option then to say, okay, if it's not just split with the city, it's also split with the homeowner that wants the sidewalk. That's why we included them as a portion as well. And that's why it went down to $8,000, I guess with that slide Megan has up there. We said at the 50-50 option, it worked out to $6,000. We went 50-50. It was $3,000 a lot, which would basically be $3,000 for the city and $3,000 for the individual homeowner. And the developer would be contributing the cost that they would have had to put a curb in. So we're trying to find some means of splitting it. And again, as Megan noted, that's a couple of options. We could have had numerous. We tried narrowing it down to a few. Again, the developers didn't figure it was all theirs, and we wanted to give you some mixes of options.
Yeah, and I guess that's always been my concern is you get developers throwing up at you that the costs are high now. And anyway, that's one of my concerns, and I'll just leave it at that. Thanks.
Is there any information that you guys have come across that indicates other municipalities doing something similar and the impact it may have had on either growth, building growth, whether or not, are there any other communities doing this currently, I guess is the first question. If they are, have they experienced all of a sudden a sharp decline in building because developers are like, I'm not starting a project, I'll go do it in Tignish where they're not charging me that amount, or is there any of that information that we would have?
We didn't have any to say that they did not do a project. Other places we saw where, whether it was complete streets or a lot were adding AT lanes and stuff after the fact, or as we do, add in sidewalks after the fact.
Yeah.
It wasn't, I think the thought was if we could add it at the time it was being built, it may be cheaper than going after, which we've shown is probably $100 per meter shorter by doing it at the time than coming in after. But
It's $100 cheaper
Cheaper.
at the time per meter.
by doing it, by eliminating that curb and gutter that would be there and then putting a sidewalk in there at the time, so there was a benefit of doing it. We didn't get any examples where I'm not gonna say any developer's gonna say, yes, every increased cost, I'm gonna go somewhere else. I would hear that 9 out of 10 times probably, but we also tried when we looked at the cross-section to say, our cross-section that we're doing in Summerside is narrower than they're doing in the province and the other subdivisions in the province. So what the province is doing for themselves and ours, our overall width is narrower than both of those.
Okay.
So that's why I stated last time that our costs, I'm talking of the actual road itself. Some people may still argue we do other things that are more expensive, but our road construction costs, as far as what we're proposing or do now, is less materials and cost than other jurisdictions. Some may argue if we don't have multiple contractors doing it here, it may be driving the price or suppliers, but the actual width of the road we put in is narrower than what's being in the standard for curb streets that the province puts in any other communities in the province.
Sure, thank you, John. Just briefly, I think when we're looking at the official plan, there's so many references to being pedestrian friendly and having sidewalks and such. I think it just ultimately supports the whole intent of whenever this got put into the official plan. So I think, yeah, definitely supportive of it. And I don't know if we're at the point to talk about what options we want to bring forward, but I think the recommendation option 4 definitely makes sense. Right? I think 33% seems like it's that go-between, so developers aren't going to bear the burden of a lot of costs, so it's the most maybe flexible. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, just as we were talking about how it's cheaper to build sidewalks right out of the gate versus later on, that is sort of point number 1. It's cheaper. Point number 2, safer, because right from the start, we're going to be presented with a sidewalk, so pedestrians won't be walking on the street. If we were to go with the no parking on the street option, which would allow us to have essentially an AT lane, so it will get the cyclists and other non-motorized vehicle users out of the lane. And I think when we were sort of discussing the widths of the street, when they are narrower, Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, it does assist with speeding because there's the perception that you're going faster when the streets are narrower, so you're not.
Your tendency is to go faster when you have less things to, I'll say, maneuver around, consider, and space to do it. If there's less driveways, less accesses, the tendency is for the driver to go faster. Narrowing stuff in, if you happen to go through on the bridge and the sides are up, yes, but our mountable curbs are not providing that enough of a deterrent, I'll say, to slow the speeds, because in St. Clair, we have them narrowed up, but we went with the mountable curbs for other reasons, to make the subdivisions less cost for people to put their driveways, and we don't appear to have people slowing down when those curbs come in because they're low. But, so yes, in theory, it does, the narrower you go with obstructions allows people to, if there's more driveways that they're cautiously looking at, if they're being cautious now, but you're correct in that the general tendency is, yes, to narrow it up would have a tendency to reduce the speeds, as well as having other, I'll say, things to consider. If I'm driving on the new east-west and there's no driveways to consider and there's no more traffic, I don't gotta be worried about people coming and going except when I get to the trail and pedestrians crossing. So your tendency is to go a little faster.
Hence the reason I seen the Summerside police sitting there today.
And there's also 4 speed monitoring signs there to advise people until it gets developed, here's what your actual speeds are going, to make people realize, yeah.
The point is.
Yeah.
Councillor Morrison?
I believe, Aaron, that you referenced that the streets in Summerside are a little narrower than the province or other municipalities, maybe?
we met with the province as part of this beforehand, and we asked them to send their cross-section, if they're to do a subdivision in jurisdictions that they control with curbs, their overall width from asphalt to asphalt and curb back curb is wider than our current standard.
Okay, and is there any regulations or anything when someone puts in a street, is there thickness of asphalt and what's underneath it?
In Summerside or theirs?
In Summerside?
Both were the same cross-section. Our base asphalt was 20 millimeters thicker than theirs that we confirmed with them last week, that we're still reviewing as far as where that came in. I think we both have a foot of shale, we both have 6 inches of gravel, we both have 40 millimeters of seal, both curbs, and we have 75 and they have 60 of base. So we have 15 millimeters more of
Asphalt.
Of the base asphalt, not the seal asphalt.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we're a little narrower, a little thicker.
But we're also only thicker on we're narrower on the shale, the gravel, and the seal as well. Like all those 3 components.
Yes.
It's only the base component, yes.
Yeah.
That we're still reviewing as part of our review we committed to doing.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah.
So on that, if we were to, and not saying we should, but if we were to decrease our
Base asphalt.
code,
Yep.
to what the rest of the province has, would that, how much of a difference would that make in the overall? Does that then bring the overall cost
We
down
can
to
get
what
that.
it's similar?
We can get that, but we only confirmed that like last
Yeah,
Tuesday or Thursday when we have our annual meeting with the province to say, okay, this is what we found through other sources, asking them to verify and get their history on, there's a longer situation, you know, like that extra 15 millimeters of base, is that giving us more longevity on our asphalt? Okay, it is. And how much are they recycling or repaving versus what we're doing on a cycle? So is that better to have that there to get you an extra 3, 4, or 5 years for the cost at the time?
right.
That's what we're supposed to go back, yes, and with the cost, that we can say, here's what the current cost of base asphalt is. It's just a calculation to say, here's how much more tonnage it is per kilometer of subdivision that goes in, so there's the cost of it.
Okay.
Then yes, there would be a cost saving,
Not true.
but I can tell you the magnitude. I don't want to say it matches putting in a sidewalk or anything, you know.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Thank you. Just very quickly, I love the idea of complete streets. I couldn't tell you right off the bat right now which option I would 100% go with. I think there's an option out there that makes sense. If we just go back to the seed committee report, there's things in there that talk about accessibility for walking around, things in our official plan, mention the movability around our city, and we had a very long in-depth discussion during our budget time around seniors getting around the community and what that means for them both physically and mentally as they age and taking away the independence of not feeling safe on the roads. So for those reasons, I think everyone should really consider deeply not only just the financial aspects of it, because that is something we do need to consider. It's something that we struggle with year after year with the maintenance and addition of sidewalks, but I really think we need to think what the residents need and figure out a way to make it happen so that people can travel around our community safely and freely.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron and Councillor. So I guess this next step, there does seem to be interest from council to move this forward to the council meeting at the end of the month with resolution. I think we'll have to work through the decision-making points in that resolution, Councillor Doiron. So I'll look to you to help lead that charge in terms of bringing that forward. On the global question, I guess the first question that I see here is whether or not we want to implement complete streets, which is set out in our official plan. If that is a yes for council, then we move into what the complete street options are that were brought forward by the committee. If that's a no, I would suggest council may have to revise our official plan and remove the references to complete streets that are set out in it. And then move our way through what the options are and then what the cost, again, the 3 cost options, the do nothing, which is 0, the 50/50, or the 3-3-3. I just have one quick question. Did the committee at all look into applying the complete streets policy to where new subdivision or new streets are built connecting to existing sidewalk network. And I only asked, I just wonder if you were to, was that looked at as an option in terms of if you build a new street?
I think, for example, we highlighted that, okay, we came up with a map and said, okay, we're not picking on one subdivision over the other, but you asked us to look at one we could compare, and we said, so Starlight Phase 2, if we implemented it there, there's no sidewalk to get to Water Street or to the network, but there is in that subdivision, there is 3 stubs that connect to the Confederation Trail. So they would have connectivity to a walking network, but in the long term, you'd have to prioritize getting that sidewalk network that's on the existing Schooner Street or I think it's what Starlight Phase 1 is, out to Water Street. So you may be, by implementing this, you'd be targeting some areas that you need to get that network connected to existing sidewalk network.
Okay.
That is part of your criteria now as we look at new sidewalks, is making connectivity and complete routes that we're.
Yeah, which is great, yeah.
But
And,
that would be
yeah, and
the-
it's good to see
yeah.
the sidewalks that council has approved budget for and that we've gotten built here in the last few years. Again, noted that it is far more expensive to build a sidewalk after the fact than to do it at the front end. So certainly look forward to the discussion at the end of the month. That's that. Okay, great. Thank you, Megan, Aaron. Appreciate the presentation, and thank you, Chair Doiron, for bringing that forward. Look forward to seeing where we go. We will a couple here that we're working on our time limit here. So action plan. Councillor Adams is away. Councillor Trenholm. I don't think there's anything update on Parks and Greenspace's plan at this point. Downtown transformation. Deputy Snow, you just have a quick couple of notes.
Yeah, just a quick couple of notes. Things continue to move along. Most recently, we went through our budget, obviously, and council has earmarked significant funds in there. But mainly, what I want to mention today is just for public knowledge, and it's being shared on social media. But on May 23rd, from 9 to 11 a.m., we're calling on city residents to sort of come together, and if they have the time to help clean up our downtown. It's obviously something that we're looking to do and start the process of making noticeable change. So people are asked to meet at Heather Moyse Drive at the gazebo there and be part of that efforts to make downtown shine. Gloves and bags, everything will be provided, so you just have to show up, and then it's going to go from 9 to 11 a.m. and then after that we're all going to go back to Evermore Brewing and have a barbecue. And maybe a beverage if you wish. But yeah, we're going to head back there and have a barbecue and thank those that come out. So I'd encourage, I know I plan to be there, and I encourage fellow councillors and families and everybody else to come out and do their part. That's it.
Thank you, Deputy Snow. Sounds great. I will also be there with you at 9 a.m. and for pretty much the whole day. Electric governance, Councillor Morrison, no update here. I think that's coming to council shortly. And Smart City, no update. Councillor Cameron, I don't think either. So that moves us through all of the committee reports and recommendations. Thank you, Council. We will now move staff reports and recommendations. There are none that are outside of the committee report and recommendations. And now we move into our committee of the whole discussion items. We have 3, all from Councillor Cameron. So obviously was busy, had the template open on the computer instead. Phil, save, change the name, save, send again. But I will open it over to you, Councillor Cameron, to 7A, street naming review.
Awesome, thank you so much. I know lately there's been a lot of discussion about different streets and names, and as I was going through, and actually when we were naming Cairns Boulevard, one stuck out to me, and that was Olympia, which is an Acadian-owned business. Through looking at the list, I noticed that we also named Loyalist and Colony in that list, which seems a little contradictory when you're talking about Acadian people and Acadian businesses to then also refer to Loyalists who colonized the Acadian people. I do think that looking at our naming list a little bit more intensely would be a smart idea, because there are things that have maybe been on there for a while that are bound to strike some interest, like it did with me. And I don't know if that is something that we would like to push more onto staff. I know that we are getting we're constantly adding stuff to staff's plate. I don't know if that would be, or if council would think it appropriate to maybe form an ad hoc committee to ask for public input for different names, and not necessarily just for historic Summerside names, but also names that have to do with different cultures, different people who reside in the city. I know we have right now, no reference to any Indigenous names. I think we are pretty low or short on any Francophone names in there as well. So I just think it's worthwhile to look at, and my suggestion is public input on what names we should be adding to the list.
Right, thank you, Councillor. I think the city, oh my gosh, 10, 12, maybe longer years ago, George Dalton chaired a street naming committee, so maybe it'd be valuable to put together an ad hoc committee again and review the existing names and then see if there are others that we can add to the list. We've certainly been scratching a bunch off here in the past 4 years, so that would be, yeah. Would council be open to Councillor Cameron's recommendation here to set up an ad hoc committee of council, and then that committee could determine the best way to go about engaging members of the public? Would that work, Councillor? Yeah, anyone opposed? All right. The committee will be ad hoc. We'll put together a quick term of reference and we'll bring it forward and get it done. Awesome. Thank you, Councillor Cameron. With that, we'll move on to item 7B. Also, Councillor Cameron. Councillor Cameron, back to you.
Thank you so much. So recently we've had a lot of discussion in the media around the development at our Summerside golf course and the wetlands surrounding it. I know that it's not our place to discuss the ins and outs of what was done or not done, or what was done properly or improperly. But I do think we owe it to our residents to get information on where the current wetlands and environmental status stands. At first, I thought it would be a really good idea to just have staff reach out to the minister's office, but I don't think that is how we should approach that. I think as council, we owe our residents enough respect to reach out ourselves and make sure we get that information and be very clear on the information that we want. I have drafted a letter that I can circulate to council to see if we are all in agreement to send that or not, or I'm very open to anyone else wanting to do the same thing. I just think it's important that we get information on where we currently are, leading up to where we currently are, what was followed, what wasn't followed, what plans we have going forward to make sure that the environment, the wetlands and the streams that are there are protected. If they are currently not being protected, how is the province going to make sure that that is followed and we are not deteriorating further into the environment that should be safe for residents to see, use, and also for the animals and wildlife to see and use as well.
Comments, questions from council? Councillor MacDougall?
Yeah, it's funny that that's on there this evening, because today I was walking this afternoon and I noticed that there was a lot of red coming through the brook system. So after I left, I drove over by the golf course, and the project manager's truck was there. So I pulled over and he came over to me, and I was talking to him, and I said, I noticed that there's a lot of silt coming down. And he said, yes. He said that was the Department of Environment was there today. That was all controlled. So it was the Department of Environment was, did I say Environment? Department of Environment was there today and asked them to lift the gate or something. And so that was fine. I said, what about the project? Now, he said the wetland in question is way over in the corner and has no effect on the, I think it's 27 acres that they're working on. That's still all approved and going ahead, and the environment is on there, checks on it quite often. So that's just the information he gave me today. So when I seen that, I thought I should pass that on.
I have two things. One, I do have photos from a few residents that have been sent to me about the waterways and the silt, both 1 year apart, almost directly to the day, to a very committed resident who walks every day and makes sure that they look at the birds that are in there. So if anyone would like to see those, I can pass those around as well. Secondly, I think it's great that you got some information, but with all due respect to you and the people working there, I want written confirmation from the province of what is done, what is being done, what has been done, what shouldn't have been done, what can be done, all of those things, so that when we are asked by residents, we have exactly what the province is doing, because there's constantly questions about that area, and I personally don't know how to answer them other than saying, to my knowledge, the wetlands are okay, and then you show me pictures of all this silt and mud and muck that is going through. So if I had clear information from the province of what, like I said, is done, has been done, will be done, all of those things, it would just make myself and I think residents feel better, and I think council will just have a clearer way of answering questions that aren't necessarily quote in our lane, but it allows us to better communicate with our residents.
Awesome. Thanks, Councillor Cameron. I'll certainly add my name to the letter as well, so if you're open to circulate it amongst members of council, and then we can send it off to, I think the minister and the deputy would be the appropriate people to receive it, and the CCA, of course, our CAO. And you're right, despite sometimes impacts to the environment just outside the boundary of our city, they certainly impact our city and our residents. That's the thing about the environment. You see, it just doesn't care about where the line is on a map. Yeah, so we share certainly the same environment with all the communities around us. So is council keen on that? Councillor Cameron, send it around, provide comments, and then we can do it up, send it on official. Do we have official letterhead? Well, if we don't, we will. And we'll get it off this week. Great, awesome. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Last one, over to you.
Great. I thought Sandra shut my mic off and she didn't want to listen to me anymore. I was pushing it and it wasn't turning on. My last submission is Tower Street Park. I've brought this up a couple of times over the last few years, and we haven't had any public update on what is going on Tower Street Park. Like I've said in the past, there was a commitment made by council and staff about 6 years ago now that when the development started in that area that was rezoned, that the park would be reinstated. We are now 6 years later, not reinstated, and I just would like some public confirmation as to what is going on with Tower Street Park.
Yeah. So last year, staff identified the parklands that were reallocated in the area. Staff began doing some light maintenance, included some park benches and some picnic tables in the area with a plan to look at the budget for this year to re-include more park infrastructure. So play structures either have been ordered or will be ordered in the near future with a plan for an install in the fall by our current forces. Just a note for council, on these smaller park installations, we attempt to do them on our own as it's more affordable for our parks budget, but then we aren't able to do them with our current crews until things slow down until the fall season. So that's why fall installation for that one. So signs will be going up indicating that a play structure coming soon, what it will look like in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you. That makes me very happy. Thank you for that, and thank you to staff for figuring out a way to make that happen. If we are putting up a sign, can we not say coming soon? Can we say coming fall of 2026? Something that's a little bit more definitive. I think there's been signs that have gone up around the city before with it coming soon, and sometimes it takes more than 6 months for it to happen. So something a little bit more definitive to give the people in the area a little bit more peace of mind to get that would be great. But other than that, I really appreciate you and staff figuring out a way to make that happen.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Cameron. That's great. Following through on things from the past. Fantastic. Anything else, Council? With that, we'll adjourn our Committee of the Whole agenda meeting, and we'll just roll straight into our Special Council, if that is okay with everybody here. So we'll call for a mover and a seconder with respect to the Special Council agenda before you. So moved, Deputy Snow. Second, Councillor Doiron. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposition? Changes, revisions, seeing none, hearing none, we'll continue. Does anyone have a conflict of interest with respect to any item on here? I'm pretty sure you don't. So with that, we'll move on to item 3, Resolution COS 25-020, Appointment of Appeal Panel. I'll hand it over to Chair of Bylaw and Policy, Councillor McColeman.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm bringing forth Resolution COS 26-020, moved by myself, Councillor Norma McColeman, seconded by Deputy Mayor Corey Snow. Whereas the City of Summerside workplace harassment policy provides for the establishment of an appeals panel to hear appeals arising under the policy, be it resolved that Council confirm the appointment of 3 members of Council to serve as the appeals panel under Section 10.3 of the City of Summerside Workplace Harassment Policy P-CS-11, as approved in closed session, with the names of the panel members recorded by the Mayor and disclosed only as required for the appeal process.
Thank you, Councillor McColeman. Resolution COS 26-020, moved by Councillor McColeman, seconded by Deputy Snow, is on the floor. Further comments, questions, statements from members of Council? Seeing and hearing none, we'll call for a vote. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the resolution is carried unanimously. Thank you, Council. At this time, we'll take a brief 3-minute recess before we move into our in-camera. And with that, we'll sign off.